The courtroom was dead silent when my 7-year-old son, Ryder, stood up from his seat and said, "Uncle David, should I tell them who lifted Gwen over the railing?" Every face in that packed courtroom turned toward David, whose skin went from tan to ghost white in seconds. The confident smile he'd worn for 6 months straight finally cracked. His lawyer grabbed his arm, whispering frantically, but David just sat there frozen, staring at my little boy like he was seeing a ghost. The judge leaned forward, her glasses sliding down her nose. "Young man, what did you just say?" And that's when I knew that after 6 months of hell, 6 months of being called a child killer, 6 months of my own family testifying against me, the truth was finally going to destroy the person who killed my baby girl. My name is Rebecca, and until 6 months ago, I thought I knew what tragedy was. My husband Mitchell had died in a car accident, leaving me alone with our 2 children. I thought that was the worst thing that could happen to our family. I was wrong. So terribly wrong. See, everyone loved David. He was Mitchell's younger brother, the successful one, the charming one who always showed up with presents for the kids and flowers for his mother. While Mitchell had been quiet and steady, David was the life of every family gathering. He had this way of making you feel like you were the most important person in the room when he talked to you. That morning, when he offered to watch my kids, my mother-in-law Francine had actually hugged him right there in the kitchen. "You're such a blessing, David," she'd said, beaming at him like he was some kind of saint. "Your brother would be so proud of how you're stepping up for Rebecca and the children." If only she knew that her precious David was about to destroy everything. Ryder's small voice echoed through the courtroom again. "Mom didn't do anything wrong. Uncle David told me to lie. He said if I told the truth, Mom would go to jail forever, and it would be my fault." The prosecutor, Ms. Vega, who'd been so confident just minutes before, looked like someone had punched her in the stomach. She'd built her entire case on David's testimony. He was her star witness, the grieving uncle who'd supposedly seen me push my own daughter off an 8th-floor balcony. "Your Honor, I request a recess," David's lawyer stammered, but the judge held up her hand. "No, counselor. The child has something to say, and we're going to listen." David tried to stand up, but the bailiff was already moving toward him. It was almost poetic, watching the panic spread across his face. For 6 months, he'd sat in that same spot, crying on cue whenever he talked about poor little Gwendolyn. He'd convinced everyone that I was an unstable mother who'd snapped under the pressure of widowhood. He'd even convinced my former neighbors to testify against me. But he hadn't counted on Ryder finding his courage. My son looked so small up there, his dinosaur tie crooked, the one he'd insisted on wearing because Gwen loved dinosaurs, Mom. His hands were shaking, but his voice was clear. Uncle David got mad because Gwen spilled juice on his laptop. He grabbed her and held her over the balcony railing. He said he was just trying to scare her so she'd be more careful. But she was crying and wiggling, and she slipped out of his hands. Francine let out a sound like a wounded animal. Vernon, my father-in-law, stood up so fast his chair fell backward. The crash echoed through the courtroom. "That's impossible," Vernon shouted. "David would never hurt anyone." But even as he said it, you could see the doubt creeping into his eyes. Because now that Ryder had said it out loud, things were starting to make sense. The way David had immediately pointed the finger at me, the way he'd just happened to be there to witness everything but couldn't save her, the way the building's security cameras had mysteriously gone offline that exact morning. "I have proof," Ryder said, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a small USB drive. "Uncle David didn't know I had a camera in my room. Dad gave it to me for my birthday so I could make videos. It recorded everything he said to me after Gwen fell." The courtroom erupted. David's lawyer was objecting to everything he could think of. The judge was banging her gavel. Reporters were frantically typing on their phones. And through it all, David just sat there, the mask he'd worn for so long finally completely shattered. This is the story of how my brother-in-law murdered my 2-year-old daughter and tried to send me to prison for it. This is the story of how a 7-year-old boy's courage brought a killer to justice. 6 months before that courtroom revelation, I was just trying to survive each day. My husband Mitchell had died in a car accident 3 months earlier, leaving me with 2 kids, 7-year-old Ryder and 2-year-old Gwendolyn. The drunk driver who hit him walked away without a scratch while my children lost their father. Life wasn't fair, but I was determined to keep going for them. We'd moved in with Mitchell's parents, Francine and Vernon, in their high-rise apartment building downtown. It wasn't ideal, but I needed help. The apartment was beautiful, 8th floor with a wraparound balcony and views of the city, but it felt suffocating. Francine meant well, but she had opinions about everything. How I fed the kids, how I dressed them, how I was handling my grief. "You need to smile more, Rebecca," she'd say while I was making breakfast. "The children need to see you being strong." I was being strong. Getting up every morning was strong. Going to work was strong. Not screaming when people told me everything happened for a reason was strong. David lived 2 floors up in the same building. He'd always been the golden child. Successful real estate broker, drove a Tesla, dated models, the works. Where Mitchell had been steady and reliable, David was flashy and charming. He had this way of entering a room that made everyone turn and look. "You need anything, you call me," he'd say, ruffling Ryder's hair every time he visited. "I'm the fun uncle now, right, buddy? We're going to take care of your mom together." Ryder would smile, but it never quite reached his eyes. Kids know things adults miss. David started showing up more often after Mitchell died. Every morning before work, every evening for dinner. Francine was thrilled. "David's so good with the children," she'd beam while watching him play with Gwen. "You're lucky to have him helping out. Not many brothers-in-law would step up like this." But something felt off. The way David would insist on babysitting even when I didn't need it. How he'd show up unannounced when I was at work, taking the kids from Francine without asking me first. The way he'd get this tight look around his mouth when Gwen acted like a normal toddler, spilling things, crying, being messy. "She needs more discipline," he'd say, watching Gwen throw her crackers on the floor. Mitchell was too soft on them. "She's 2, David. This is what 2-year-olds do. Well, when I have kids, they'll know better." Ryder started getting quieter around him. One night, as I tucked him in, he grabbed my hand. "Mom, do I have to go to Uncle David's tomorrow?" "Why, sweetie? Did something happen?" He looked at his dinosaur sheets, tracing the pattern with his finger. "No, I just don't like when he gets angry. He held Gwen over the stair railing yesterday because she wouldn't stop crying. He said he was teaching her not to be scared of heights." My blood ran cold. "He did what?" "He says it makes kids tougher. He did it to me, too, on the balcony, but I didn't cry, so he stopped." I confronted David the next morning. He laughed it off, that perfect smile of his never wavering. "Rebecca, come on, I was just playing with them. Kids love that flying sensation. Mitchell and I used to do it all the time when we were young. Our dad did it to us. It's harmless fun." "It's not harmless if it scares them." Everything scares kids these days because parents coddle them. "Look, I'm trying to help here. Would you rather I stop coming around?" The threat was subtle, but clear. Stop complaining or lose the free babysitting. And I needed the help. God forgive me. I needed the help. The morning of the incident, I was making breakfast. Gwen was playing with her blocks on the living room floor, building and knocking down towers, babbling in that sweet toddler way. "Mama, look, tower tall, tall." "That's beautiful, baby bear." The balcony doors were closed and locked. I always kept them locked because we were on the 8th floor, and Gwen had just learned to climb. David came over early, letting himself in with the key Francine had given him. He was wearing his usual expensive suit, cologne filling the kitchen. "Thought I'd take the kids to the park," he offered, pouring himself coffee from my pot without asking. "Give you a break before work." "That's okay. Francine's watching them today. Mom's got her book club. I already told her I'd handle it." He'd arranged everything without asking me. Again. But I was running late, and arguing would make me later. I kissed both kids goodbye. Gwen wrapped her tiny arms around my neck, smelling like strawberry shampoo and innocence. "Love you, Mama." "Love you too, baby bear. Be good for Uncle David." Those were the last words I ever said to her. 3 hours later, my phone exploded with calls. Francine's number, Vernon's, David's, numbers I didn't recognize. My hands shook as I answered. "There's been an accident," Francine sobbed through the phone. "Gwendolyn fell from the balcony." The world stopped. The words didn't make sense. They couldn't make sense. I'd locked those doors. I always locked those doors. "What do you mean she fell? Where's David? Where's Ryder?" Just come to St. Mary's Hospital, please, Rebecca, just come. I don't remember driving to the hospital. I don't remember parking. I just remember running through those emergency room doors and seeing David in the waiting room, tears streaming down his face, his shirt different from this morning. Blue now, instead of white. He grabbed my shoulders hard enough to hurt. She pushed her. I saw it. You pushed your own daughter. What, David, what are you talking about? I was at work. Don't lie. His voice was loud enough that everyone turned to stare. I came back from getting coffee and I saw you on the balcony with her. You were arguing with her about making a mess and then you just lifted her up and she went over. My legs gave out. Vernon caught me before I hit the floor, but his face was stone cold. The neighbors saw you too, Vernon said, his voice flat and terrible. Mrs. Holloway from 8B said she saw a woman in a blue shirt on your balcony right before Gwen fell. You were wearing blue this morning. I changed at work. I spilled coffee on my blue shirt and changed into my spare clothes. Check with my office. Call my assistant. You could have come back, Vernon continued. Your office is only 20 minutes away. You left for that meeting that got canceled. What meeting? I didn't have any canceled meeting. David pulled out his phone, showing a text. You sent this to Mom, said your morning meeting was canceled, so you were coming home to check on the kids. I looked at the screen. There it was. From my number, sent at 9:45 a.m., but I'd never sent that text. I'd never typed those words. The police arrived while I was still trying to understand that my baby was gone. Really gone. Not coming back. Gone. 2 officers, their faces carefully neutral. Ma'am, we need to ask you some questions. My daughter is dead, I said, the words feeling impossible in my mouth. Please, can this wait? I'm afraid not. There are some inconsistencies we need to clear up. Within hours, I was at the police station, sitting in a gray room that smelled like old coffee and despair. Detective Morrison sat across from me, reading from statements. Mrs. Holloway says she saw a woman in a blue shirt holding the child up high, like she was showing her something over the railing. Then the child fell. She's very clear about the blue shirt and long, dark hair. David has long hair for a man. From behind, people have confused us before. The detective's face didn't change. Mr. David Mitchell says you've been unstable since your husband died. Says you asked him to watch the kids more often because you couldn't handle it. That's not true. David offered. He insisted. He also says that morning you seemed agitated, mentioned that Gwen had been up all night crying, that you were at the end of your rope. She slept through the night. She's been sleeping through the night for months. But David had thought of everything. He showed them texts I'd never sent, complaining about the kids. He'd created a whole narrative of a mother cracking under pressure. Francine backed up his version, innocently repeating the lies he'd fed her. She did seem overwhelmed, Francine told the police. I told David to check on her more often. Thank God he was there, even if he couldn't save poor Gwendolyn. The security cameras that would have proved my innocence were conveniently offline. A maintenance issue, the building supervisor explained, that had started at 9 a.m. that morning and wasn't fixed until noon. My son was there, I said desperately. Ryder saw everything. Ask him. We did, Detective Morrison replied. He says he was in his room playing video games with headphones on. Didn't see or hear anything until his uncle found him. They charged me with involuntary manslaughter that night. The prosecutor, Ms. Vega, wanted to upgrade it to murder too. She was young, ambitious, and saw this case as her ticket to bigger things. A mother who snapped, she told the press outside the courthouse. A tragedy that could have been prevented if someone had intervened sooner. My lawyer, Mr. Thorne, was blunt when we met. 3 witnesses place you at the scene. Your son apparently saw nothing. The building's cameras were down. Your phone shows messages about coming home. This looks bad, but I wasn't there. Then we need to prove that, and right now I don't know how we do that. For weeks I sat in legal limbo, out on bail but treated like a pariah. The grocery store clerks wouldn't meet my eyes. Parents at Ryder's school crossed the street when they saw me coming. Someone spray-painted baby killer on my car. I had to move back in with Francine and Vernon because my landlord evicted me, claiming other tenants felt unsafe. Ryder had gone completely silent. He wouldn't talk about that day, wouldn't talk about Gwen, would barely talk at all. He'd just sit in his room, staring at nothing, flinching whenever David came to visit. Even my own son, seemed afraid of me. David still came around, playing the grieving uncle perfectly. He'd bring Ryder toys and pat my shoulder sympathetically while Francine watched. "I know this is hard," he'd say, loudly enough for his parents to hear. "But maybe it's for the best if Ryder stays with me for a while, until this all gets sorted out." "Over my dead body," I said. "Well, that might be arranged too," he whispered when his parents turned away, his mask slipping for just a second. Then one evening, 3 weeks before the trial, I was tucking Ryder in when he grabbed my hand tight enough to hurt. "Mom, I need to tell you something." "What is it, baby?" His eyes filled with tears. "I wasn't playing video games when Gwen fell." My heart stopped. "Ryder, why didn't you say anything?" "Uncle David said if I told anyone what really happened, you'd go to jail forever. He said they'd blame you anyway because moms always get blamed when kids get hurt, and I'd lose you too, just like we lost Dad. He said foster homes do bad things to kids." I pulled him close, fighting to keep my voice steady. "Ryder, tell me exactly what happened." "I was on the balcony with them. Uncle David was mad because Gwen knocked over his coffee on his laptop, his work laptop with important houses on it. He grabbed her and held her over the railing. He said he was teaching her a lesson about being careful. Oh my God. He always did that when he babysat. He'd hold us over high places to make us listen, over the stairs, over the balcony, even out the car window once when we were parked. But this time, Gwen was squirming and crying really hard, and she slipped. She just slipped right out of his hands. I couldn't breathe. Why was he wearing my blue shirt? He spilled coffee on his white shirt when Gwen knocked over the cup. He grabbed yours from the laundry basket. After Gwen fell, he made me go to my room fast. He said to put on my headphones and turn on my game and pretend I'd been there the whole time. He said he was trying to protect you, that no one would believe the truth anyway. "Is there anything else, sweetheart? Anything at all?" Ryder nodded slowly. "I recorded him on my tablet. After it happened, when he was telling me what to say. Dad gave me that spy app for my birthday, remember? It was still running." My hands shook as Ryder showed me the video. There was David, pacing in Ryder's room, his voice cold and calculated. "Listen carefully, Ryder. You were in here the whole time. You didn't see anything. If anyone asks, you had your headphones on playing that dinosaur game. If you say anything else, your mom goes to prison. They'll think she made you lie. You'll end up in foster care where bad things happen to little boys. Do you understand?" "But Uncle David, you dropped her." "It was an accident. But no one will believe that. They'll think I'm covering for your mom. Or worse, they'll think you're lying and take you away from her. Is that what you want?" I called Mr. Thorne immediately. He came over that night, watched the video 3 times, then sat back with the first smile I'd seen from him. "This changes everything, but we need more. The video helps, but David will claim it's taken out of context. We need corroboration." The building cameras were down. The building's cameras were down. But what about neighboring buildings? Traffic cams? ATM cameras across the street? If David was lying about getting coffee, where was he? If your phone sent texts you didn't send, how did that happen? We spent the next 2 weeks gathering evidence. Mr. Thorne hired a private investigator who found crucial footage. A traffic camera from the intersection showed David entering the building at 9:47 a.m., not coming back with coffee like he claimed. The coffee shop he said he went to had no record of him that morning. An ATM camera across the street had a partial angle of our balcony. The quality was grainy, but with enhancement it showed a figure in blue with David's build and short hair, not my longer hair. But the real breakthrough came from an unexpected source. The real breakthrough came from Carlos, the building's maintenance man. He approached Mr. Thorne outside the courthouse 3 days before the trial, looking nervous but determined. "I need to show you something," he said, pulling out his phone. "I wasn't supposed to say anything, but I can't let that lady go to prison for something she didn't do." He showed us a video on his phone. "I was documenting the camera outage for insurance purposes that morning. The company requires it when systems go down. I took a video of the maintenance room to show the system was actually offline. In the background of his video, through a window, you could see our balcony. The timestamp showed 10:23 a.m., the exact time of the incident. The figure holding Gwen was clearly David. You could see his distinctive watch, the Rolex Mitchell had given him for his 30th birthday. You could see him holding her over the railing. You could see her slip. "Why didn't you come forward before?" Mr. Thorne asked. "Mr. David, he got me this job. He threatened my family would be deported if I said anything. But I have my green card now. My family is safe. I can't stay quiet anymore." The courtroom was packed on the day of the trial. David sat at the prosecution's table, wearing a black suit and the grieving uncle mask he'd perfected. He'd even grown out his stubble to look more distraught. Francine and Vernon sat behind him, holding hands, glaring at me like I was the devil incarnate. David took the stand first, his voice breaking at all the right moments. "She was unhinged," he told the jury, dabbing at his eyes. "I tried to stop her, but I was too late. I saw her lift poor Gwen over that railing. The look in her eyes was just empty, like she wasn't even there anymore." "And where were you when this happened?" Ms. Vega asked. "I'd just come back from getting coffee. I was walking into the apartment when I saw her through the balcony doors." "What did you do?" "I ran to try to save Gwen, but it was too late. She'd already fallen. Rebecca just stood there looking down, not even crying." That's when Mr. Thorne stood up. "Your Honor, we have new evidence that came to light this week. Permission to present?" The judge nodded. Mr. Thorne played the maintenance video first. The courtroom gasped as they watched David hold my baby over that railing, watched her squirm, watched her slip from his hands. David's face went white. "That video is doctored. That's not even clear." But Mr. Thorne wasn't done. He played the ATM footage, enhanced by an expert to show David's short hair, his build, his watch. Then he played the traffic camera footage showing David never left for coffee. "Your client lied about his whereabouts," Mr. Thorne said to Ms. Vega. "He lied about getting coffee. He lied about what he saw. And we can prove he had access to Mrs. Mitchell's phone through the family tracking app he insisted everyone install for safety." David was stammering now, trying to explain, but his story kept changing. First, the videos were fake. Then they were misinterpreted. Then it was an accident he was trying to cover up to protect the family's reputation. That's when Ryder stood up from his seat beside me. "Uncle David, should I tell them who lifted Gwen over the railing?" The judge called for order as the courtroom erupted. "Young man, come here." Ryder walked to the witness stand with more courage than any 7-year-old should need. Mr. Thorne played the recording from Ryder's tablet, David's voice filling the courtroom, threatening my son, coaching him to lie. "He told me Mom would go to jail if I told the truth," Ryder said, looking straight at the jury. "He said I'd end up in foster care where bad things happen to kids, but I can't let my mom go to jail for something Uncle David did." David jumped up. "He's been coached. This is ridiculous. That recording is out of context." But then came the final nail. Ms. Vega, who'd been so sure of my guilt, slowly stood up. Her face was pale, her hands shaking. "Your Honor, in light of this evidence, the state moves to dismiss all charges against the defendant and file charges against David Mitchell for manslaughter and attempting to frame Mrs. Mitchell." Even Mrs. Holloway, when shown the enhanced footage and told about David's similar height and build to mine from behind, admitted her mistake. "Oh my God, that's not her hair at all. That's short hair. That's a man. I'm so sorry. I was so sure, but I was wrong." David tried to run. He made it 3 steps before the bailiffs caught him at the door, slamming him against the wall as they cuffed him. Francine was sobbing. "David, how could you? How could you do this?" He turned to her, his mask finally completely off, his face twisted with rage. "It was an accident. She wouldn't stop crying. She spilled coffee on my laptop, my work laptop. The deal of the year was on that laptop. I didn't mean to drop her. She just wouldn't stop squirming." And there it was, the confession, in front of everyone. David was sentenced to 25 years for manslaughter and attempting to frame me. The judge called it one of the most heinous cases of betrayal she'd seen in 30 years on the bench. She said the particular cruelty of using a mother's grief against her, of threatening a 7-year-old child, of almost destroying what was left of our family, warranted the maximum sentence. During the sentencing, David's real history came out. 3 previous girlfriends came forward with stories of him holding them over high places when he was angry. A former business partner revealed David had once dangled his dog from a parking garage to teach it not to bark. The pattern had always been there. Mitchell had known. That's why he'd never wanted David alone with our kids, but he died before he could warn me properly. Francine and Vernon couldn't look me in the eye for months. They'd chosen to believe their living son over their dead son's wife. They'd nearly cost me everything. "I'm sorry," Francine finally said 6 months later, standing at my door with tears streaming down her face. "I just couldn't believe David would hurt anyone. He was always such a good boy, always so successful, so charming." "He was never a good boy," I told her. "Mitchell knew it. He tried to tell you both for years, but you never wanted to hear it. David was your golden child who could do no wrong." Vernon wrote me a letter. He couldn't say it to my face, but he wrote that he'd failed Mitchell, failed me, and failed his granddaughter. He'd been so blinded by David's success, by his charm, by the image of the perfect son, that he'd ignored every warning sign. "Mitchell was the good one," he wrote. "Mitchell was always the good one. I just couldn't see it." Ryder started therapy, working through the guilt of his silence and the trauma of that day. The therapist said he showed remarkable resilience, but I knew the truth. No child should have to be that resilient. No child should have to choose between the truth and the threats of an adult he was supposed to trust. "I thought I was protecting you, Mom," he told me one evening as we looked through photo albums of Gwen. "Uncle David made me so scared." "You were brave to finally tell the truth, baby. That took more courage than most adults have in their entire lives." "Do you think Gwen would be proud of me? She loved her big brother more than anything. She'd be so proud." We moved away from that high-rise, away from the memories, away from the balcony that haunted our dreams. We found a small house with a yard and no stairs, where Ryder could ride his bike and I could plant a garden in Gwen's memory. Pink roses, because she loved pink everything. Carlos, the maintenance man who saved my life with his video, still sends Christmas cards. He wrote once that his conscience wouldn't have let him live with himself if he'd stayed silent. His courage to come forward despite David's threats saved me from a lifetime in prison. Mrs. Holloway sends me letters sometimes, pages and pages of apologies for her mistaken testimony. "I was so sure of what I saw," she writes, "but I only saw what I expected to see. I expected a struggling widow to snap, not a trusted uncle to be a monster. I'm so sorry." I keep Gwendolyn's picture on my nightstand, my baby bear who loved her blocks and called everyone friend, who gave the wettest kisses and the tightest hugs. She deserved better than David's anger over a spilled coffee and a damaged laptop. She deserved to grow up, to go to school, to learn to ride a bike, to have her first crush, to live. But her death taught me this. When someone shows you warning signs, believe them. When a child expresses discomfort, listen, really listen. When your instincts scream that something is wrong, don't let politeness or family pressure silence them. And when the truth seems impossible, look harder, because sometimes the most trusted person in the room is the one holding your baby over the edge. David will be eligible for parole in 15 years. I'll be there at every hearing, making sure they remember what he did, not just to Gwendolyn, but to all of us. He didn't just kill my daughter. He tried to destroy her mother, too, using grief as his weapon, using a child's fear as his shield. But truth, even when it comes late, even when it comes from the voice of a 7-year-old boy brave enough to speak it, has a way of breaking through the best constructed lies. My daughter is gone, but her story might save another child. If one parent reads this and listens to their instincts, if one person recognizes the warning signs, if one child finds the courage to speak up, then maybe Gwen's death won't be completely meaningless. That's all I have to hold on to now. That and my brave son, who chose truth over fear when it mattered most. If this story touched you, if it made you think about the warning signs we often ignore, please like this video and share it. Someone in your life might need to hear this message. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more real stories that matter. Thank you for listening to Gwen's story.